Renovation in France, grouting the tiles. So left the tile in a day or two just to thoroughly dry, because there were one or two areas that we had to use a little bit more adhesive, where the wall wasn't exactly square. So it was time to get around to grouting. And first of all, it's removing all the spacers. Like I said before, I never put the spacers into the corners of the tiles. I always just use them to support the horizontal and the vertical. Um, Two reasons for that. Sometimes if walls are out ever so slightly and you're just going on putting the spacers into the corners, you can find actually the tiling starts to run out, just because it's kind of following the lay of the wall. So I find if you're using them just to space, horizontally and or vertically, um, you can correct that where necessary. So if you find the walls running out ever so slightly, you can turn the spacer one way or the other just to slightly thicken it, or to make it slightly thinner, or additionally put a tiny bit of sort of screwed up cardboard in place just to maintain the line. So I've always kind of done that. And with that as well. Obviously, you've got the economy of you keep the spacers for the next job. They're fairly easy to use. They're fairly easy to remove. Um, and why continue by things like that when you don't need to? So a little bit of economy there for you, and the reasoning why. And then it's a question of the applying the grout. So the grout comes in powder form. You can buy it ready mixed. I always find it's better to you buy the powdered form. Just knock up as much as you think you're going to need to be a wee bit careful with that, because you can be tempted to put too much water into the container you're going to be using to mix up, and thinking, oh, that's not a lot of water. It's surprising how much powder you need to actually create the paste. So it's always better to put a smallish amount of water in and knock up a bit of stuff and see where that gets you. So you want the consistency to be slightly thicker than sort of thick. It's like a thick cream you want it to be. You don't want it to be falling off the trowel or whatever you're using to apply it on, when you put it on the tiles. And then you can see roughly how far that's going to cover if you're sort of new to grouting. And then obviously if you need to knock up some more, you can knock up some more. But other than that, you end up using the entire bag because you've put way too much water in to begin with, and it's still like a soup rather than a thick paste. At the end of the job, you've wasted so much of it, and obviously if it's too watery, it's not gonna hold well in the joins. So little by little is generally better. And obviously, if you've got the experience, you know roughly how much to knock up. So here, I was just I think at the end I was just a tiny bit short of grout, but it's no big shakes, just to knock up a wee bit more. And I use a squeegee to apply into the joints. So a squeegee is kind of, it's sort of thick foam, but it's flexible enough that you can apply it in, bring it across. I tend to work on a sort of 45-degree angle, so I'm running it diagonally. That way, you're not dragging the grout out of the joint one way or the other when you're doing it. So if you're just going horizontally, you've got which would be good for the vertical joins, but it will tend to drag the mortar, the adhesive out of, not the adhesive, the grouting rather, out of the horizontals. Or if you're doing it vertically, it would be the opposite. So it would hold well on the horizontal, but it would drag out the vertical. So if you do it on a diagonal, it's not going to drag out of anything because you're coming across on such an angle, so you can kind of see when it comes to clearing up. And obviously you want to be taking off as much as possible. Once you've finished, once you think the joint is filled, you want to be taking off as much as possible of the excess. And the squeegee is very good for that, with it being flexible. And what you'll kind of end up with is a bit of a sort of a cloud over the tiling, which is obviously easier to clean them. Then if you leave too much stuff on, we were offered a job. My main career was as a landscape gardener, but as I've said before, we often, people had a lot of confidence in us, and we were often offered other works, extensions, and things like that. And one particular lady in Purley, She just sewed the Croydon, asked if we would redo the showroom for her. And obviously we said yes, she's a nice lady, and we'd done all the gardens and that, so it was no big shakes. And I asked one of my neighbours just to start doing the grout and filling in, and I did explain to him how to do it. And I think I'd nipped off to pick up something for the merchants, and I've come back, and the tile's just absolutely caked in grout, and it was half dried by then as well, and it was a real nightmare getting it off. So it's always better with these things. Take your time and get the excess off. Don't think, oh, I'll do that later on. Which he obviously thought, well, I'll just fill it. He was keen to impress me. So he's decided he's just going to whack grouting all over the option, and it's sort of like it goes off fairly quickly, and it was a real nightmare to clean up afterwards. Anyway, we did it, but a lesson to be learnt there. Um, and ever since then, I've done the grouting myself, so not leave it to anybody else. And then you're going to, once you've applied all the grouting and it's filled, and you've taken as much excess off you can with the squeegee. It's a question of bucket of clean water, clean cold water, and a clean sponge. And what you want to do is get the sponge dampened but not wet. So you sort of squeeze it out with your hands, and then you start to just clean off the tiles. And again, you want to be running it sort of on a 45-degree angle again, so that you're not going to be dragging out the joints that you've just filled. So take your time with that as well. And if you've got any awkward bits like in the corners, you can just work very slowly and just clean up. Just take it nice, sort of smooth line down. Obviously, if you do rake a bit of stuff out, normally you've got some excess. You might have a bit of excess still from when you finished, and you can just touch that in with your finger or whatever, or reuse the squeegee. If you take your time, generally, you'll save yourself the effort of that. And with this, again, when you do it, you think, oh, well, that's it. It's done now. It's nice and tidy and finished. But actually, you will still be left with a very light cloud at the end of it once all this is dried on the tiles. And what I would then tend to do is leave it then another day or two, so it's all nicely thoroughly dried, the grout. And then just a bucket of water again, normally with a little bit of washing up liquid or whatever, and just go over the entire area. And that way then, or you can do it, you can finish it just with a dry cloth, and the dry cloth will just take off the dust that's left. So the sort of two systems are doing it there. If you've taken the excess off anyway, and you've got the cloud, and then you've used the sponge, and that's taken off 99%, and then you've just got this very thin light cloud just sitting over it, then a dry cloth will often do the trick for you. But again, a bit of soapy water won't do any harm either if you've allowed it to dry a couple of days. So it's all nice and thoroughly dried. There's still a wee bit more tile and stuff to do here, but I was keen to get the bottom area done because I wanted to get the loo back into position, get it reconnected up. And then that because obviously it's taking up space in the corridor, and obviously it's just useful to have that. It was already connected anyway, so it's all useful to have that reconnected and back into position. And then there's one or two cuts to be done. As you can see, thin cuts to do on the left-hand side where it meets the cob wall. And then there's a bit of tiling to do over and above where I'm currently working, and then around the top of the shower unit, and then the other side of the wall, which isn't a great deal. In total, it's probably not more than about a square metre that needs to go in. So that will be done sort of shortly anyway. And then that's the tile effective finish for that, and then that means I can then get the flooring down. And once I've got the flooring down, I can get the vanity unit in and connect it up as well. So all that should come together quite nicely, and obviously then finish off the cob. There'll be a little bit of tiling just in front of the vanity unit, or at the rear of the vanity unit rather, just for sort of splashback to protect the wall from that. And then it's just a question of whatever I'm going to do to protect the cob walls. It's obviously it's going to be a humid area to a degree, but hopefully not too humid. Um, and it's quite nice to see the tiling in place. And again, they're not. It's a fairly neutral tile. It's nothing too extravagant going on here. And like I said, I prefer putting staggered bonds in rather than having straight joins running up and down. So that's that for that. Incidentally, actually, I would put the floor down, saying that before I put the toilet in place, which obviously makes sense as well. So the toilet can sit on the new PVC floor, which obviously designed for slightly wetter areas than laminate flooring is. Right, so the end of this video. Hope you found it useful and informative. And please leave a comment and please like and subscribe.